Hey guys, girls, I'm James and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about FPVs. So a couple years ago, I'd wanted to get into FPV. I've been flying camera drones for years and it looked like fun. And so I bought this Easy Pilot kit. I didn't like it at all. I thought FPV is not for me. It's not any fun. Then I bought all kinds of analog stuff and got the little Tiny Hawks and a little Cine Whoop. And still, these were so hard to fly. And even though I had spent some time in the simulator, I still didn't think FPV was for me. Then DJI came out with their FPV. And this has so many different levels. You can start out like a camera drone and it'll teach you how to fly FPV. So I bought another one to fly just in acro mode, but I really never thought it was that much fun. It didn't feel like the simulator. And I had spent about 60 hours in the simulator with liftoff and DRL. But that's not what these are really for, but that's a subject for another video. So I really just want to share my FPV journey with you before I have my drone talk with Spencer. And this talk with Spencer is if you know nothing about FPV drones. The terminology, what FPV means about the drones, how much different it is than camera drones. So I bought a used Cine Whoop from somebody. If you're going to buy a used FPV drone, take someone with you that knows what they're looking at. One of the motors burned up on it. I tried to fix it. I burned up the ECU. I'm still waiting on parts on this one. Then I bought the cheapest HD Cine Whoop on Banggood. Don't do that. I mean, this thing didn't last very long and I had all kinds of problems with it. So I got this ProTech 25 Cine Whoop. This thing's a lot of fun to fly. It's pretty easy to fly if you're used to camera drones and you've had some time in the simulator. But then I got the Nazgul Evoke 5. This thing changes everything. This is a true FPV drone. And believe it or not, I think it's easier to fly than the other ones, than the Tiny Hawks and all the other ones. It has so much better control. So I consider, if you know how to ride a bicycle, this is like riding a bicycle. This is like riding a unicycle. Talk about, they're so much fun. I just wanted to share some of my FPV journey with you. I'll have some videos coming out, reviews of different FPV drones and what it's like for a almost 60-year-old guy to get started in FPV. But if you like drones, man, you got to give this a shot. You only live once. FPV is a blast. And you'll understand why so many FPV enthusiasts don't even want to fly a camera drone, because once you get used to flying these, they're so much more fun. I'm still going to keep doing the budget beginner drones because that's so important. Like Holy Stone is coming out with this new HS720G soon, and I'll be able to release the video on this within the next month when they release it. So thanks so much for watching. Here's my review of Spencer. Enjoy. Hey guys and girls, I'm James and welcome to the channel, to Drone Talk episode number 5. Guys, all year you've been asking me for some FPV stuff. Well, here you go. We're going to be talking FPV today with the FPV expert.
Hi, I'm Spencer. I wouldn't really say I'm an FPV expert, but it is my main hobby. Spent a lot of money on FPV and I'm excited to help James get into it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun the last week. Actually, about a year ago, when I got the new FPV that came out, actually it's hard to believe it's already been a year, when this drone came out. And I posted a video talking about how I couldn't understand analog stuff. And he reached out to me a year ago. Yeah. And now we're just getting together and we'll go over all the different aspects of FPV drone, chargers, batteries, and the controllers and everything. But so the DJI FPV to me changed everything because you just plug it in and you fly. And yeah. I've never had so many bad comments and people cutting me down because I couldn't understand the analog stuff, because it's almost a cult following to the FPV. The soldering, getting in there and understanding beta flight, tuning your motors, all that kind of stuff, to me, I just didn't have time to try to understand it. The more I tried it, the more frustrated I got. Because there is a learning curve in the beginning. Yeah, very much. Where this one, you push a button and you fly it, and it's got like 6 different levels. You can start out like a regular camera drone all the way up to full acro. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and your YouTube channel.
I have a YouTube channel. It's called Daily Mynt. Mynt is spelled with a Y. Basically, I talk about cryptocurrency, crypto assets, and that's how I make most of my money right now, is investing into different crypto assets. Hodling, trading, and just doing different dApps and different staking aspects and stuff like that.
Yep. So this is a drone. Mm-hmm. This is a camera drone. So what is that? First of all, what does FPV stand for?
First person view.
Right. So this view. So what's different between this and an FPV drone?
So the biggest difference between a normal camera drone and an FPV drone is that instead of just flying it with the controller and watching the drone, there is a camera on an FPV drone too, right at the front, just like the camera drone. But instead of this being recorded to take beautiful pictures or beautiful scenery pictures, you wear goggles, and there's all kinds of different brands. These are actually my analog goggles that I use, and you wear them, and there are actually screens inside this, so whatever this camera is seeing at the front of the drone is what you're seeing inside the goggles, so it's like you're in the cockpit almost, like you're in the cockpit of an airplane, like you're sitting there in the driver's seat of the drone.
Okay, but so anybody that has a camera drone, what happens when they go buy one of these and they try to fly it?
Oh yeah, so the other big difference between like these is there's basically no safety features built into one of these drones at all. There's no obstacle avoidance. There's no just sit and hover. So if you're on your controller on the sticks and you let go, your drone is just gonna drop out of the sky. It's gonna go crazy. Whereas if you let go of the sticks on one of those camera drones, it's just gonna stay there and hover.
Yeah, so this is connected to satellites. So even if you walk up to it and you grab it and you pull it 3 feet over, it's going to go back to where it was because it's following the controls.
Yep.
And if you ever panic in a situation and you let go, it's just going to stop. Where this drone is always in a constant drift. There is no stop.
There is no stop. So if you panicked and let go of the sticks, it's either going to keep going forward and crash into someone, a thing, something, or it's just going to fall. Basically, you are not in control, and what happens was because you just let go of the sticks.
The first 10, 15 times I got in the simulator, I'd go 1 second and I'm thinking my simulator's broke because it's so hard to get this thing up in the air, and there's a learning curve. And especially if you start with the camera drone, you're just usually flying around panning it, where you can't fly this panning it, you've got to fly it with a roll. And there's just a skill set that is so much fun to learn how to fly, and it's not something you can spend a bunch of money and you just buy something that works. You've got to get that skill set down on your own.
Yeah, I mean, my number one recommendation if you want to get into FPV drones is to get a simulator. There's all kinds of different ones. There's liftoff, there's DRL, DCL. Like there is a lot of different FPV drone simulators. Get a controller like this one, the Radiomaster TX12.
And how much is this?
This is actually about 80 bucks. I think they're like cheaper now, and there's even more, like more radios. But the reason why I like this one over some of the other ones is this is actually a radio that you can.
Is this the most popular one?
This, I would say in the past, the QX7.
Okay.
But now the Radiomasters are more popular. What's really cool about this one is that this, as you graduate into more and more drones, because whenever you buy one of those ready-to-fly kits, they're going to come with a controller that, to be honest, sucks. The controller sucks, and it's going to be connected to one drone, and you're not going to want to fly it anymore. You will grow out of that controller.
Yeah. See, I bought this. This, and these aren't cheap. I mean, they've actually got some better ones out now that it comes with the controller and the goggles, and the drone's good. The goggles are semi-good, and the controller's really bad.
Yeah.
So even if you bought this and you're trying to fly it, you'd think, man, FPV's not for me because I can't control this thing.
Yeah, and you'll grow out of that really quick. So you spend 80 bucks on the controller. There's actually a few free simulators, right? And if you decide you don't like it, you can just resell the controller, and you're maybe out 20 bucks because you could probably resell this for 50, right? Or you're out $30, sorry, math. And and you're not out that much money. Whereas if you bought one of those kits, what is that kit, like $200-300 bucks?
It's a couple $100, yeah.
A couple $100 So being out $30 if you decide it's not for you is way better than what else you can get.
And then a lot of people try to buy these little Cine Whoops to learn how to fly. I actually think this Tiny Hawk 2 is easier to fly than this thing.
I agree, but it's all preference. A lot of people do like these, I know, but I think this is a better drone than this one. But it's all preference.
In regular camera drones, it's much better to have something where the props are protected. But on this, it really doesn't matter. I'm telling you can crash the heck out of these things. Yeah,
and these props are so cheap anyways. You can get like a pack of like 3 or 4 sets for like $5.
Yeah.
So even if you do break them, it's not a big deal.
Now these do come with different settings. When you first start flying these, you can start out in level mode and then go to horizon mode and then go full acro.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not a camera drone. I mean, it's still hard to fly, even in horizon mode. It's still really hard to control.
Yeah, it's still very, very different. This is actually flies very similar to one of these bigger 5-inch ones, whereas this one right here flies completely different than the bigger ones. Whereas,
and then we have the Cine Whoops. We're working on this one.
Oh yeah,
that fly around, and these actually fly really good for cinematic shots.
Yeah, so if you're wanting more cinematic shots, something like that is going to be better. But once again, I think it's all about putting in the simulator time, and if you put a lot of time in the simulators, and you are using an actual radio control versus like an Xbox controller, which is going to be very different. You know, like I put in like maybe 40, 60 hours, and when I got one of these, I was doing pretty well. You know, and just like I said, I'm not going to claim to be an expert or anything, but the translation between the simulator to the real thing is
and this
very
is
close.
this is my iRacing simulator that I've had for 10 years, and this is my old one. I even had a full motion set. iRacing has been out for, it's a simulator that a lot of race car drivers use, and even Ty Gibbs got into a race car last year, 18 years old, never done a race before in one of those cars, and had never been on the track with no practice and won. Because he had put in thousands of hours into the simulator. It's the same thing with these drones. If you're good in the simulator, can you be good on one of these?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that if you're good in the simulator, you're going to be good on one of these. I mean, yes, there's a lot of differences between like the motors or the type of drone, etc. But as far as knowing, you have to use both sticks. You have to go left, right, the yaw, the pitch, all of that. It's I would say it's maybe like 85-90% the same.
Right. And one thing I like about the simulators too, it lets you know how many hours you've been in it. So, you know, probably 60 hours. Some people could be in it for 5 or 6. It just if you're 25 years old, you're going to pick it up a lot faster than an old fart like me at 58, because your subconscious has to take over and fly it. If you're trying to think about what you're doing, it ain't gonna work. You gotta fly it subconsciously. Kind of like when you first start driving, you know, you're thinking about everything that you're doing, and now you drive to work and you don't even think about it. You're aware, but you're not thinking about, oh, I'm turning this and I gotta think about what I'm doing. You're watching where you're going, but you're not thinking about driving. It's the same thing with the skill set on these, and it's the same thing with the camera drone in the beginning. You know, you've gotta learn the orientation of the controls, but on these, the orientation of the controls is completely different. It's a different skill set.
Well, it doesn't help that you can customize everything too. So
yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that. There's a lot of different things. These camera drones have intelligent batteries. If you charge it and come home and you don't use it, it'll just decharge itself. What happens to these FPV batteries?
So these FPV batteries, if you fully charge it up and then you didn't use it, it actually can break the battery, right? In quotes. So
catch fire?
It could potentially catch fire. It could potentially explode. Basically, lots of bad things could potentially happen if you treated these LiPo batteries that you would use for these kind of drones the same way as you would one of those really smart batteries. Because I had one of those smart batteries. You can charge up and leave it alone. You don't have to do anything. You basically beat it up.
It'll decharge itself.
Yeah. Whereas these batteries, you need to make sure you're treating them right. If you don't use it, there's a thing called storage mode where it discharges into that.
You got to hook it up to one of these chargers.
Yep.
This is mine, and this is his that's on sale on Amazon. I'm going to order one of these at $160, where it's a lot more simpler to use than one of these.
Yeah, so that's the other thing is all these batteries could all be different, but just like those camera drones, like each battery for each drone is all completely different. Whereas you have like 4S and 6S and 2S.
And what that means is if you look at this battery, there's the different cells on it. So this is a 4S, and so these are 1S batteries put together. So these, which makes it a 2S. So the batteries are all interchangeable on these drones.
Yeah, so I can
as long as the connectors are the same. Right?
Yep, as long as the connectors are the same. And then you got to make sure what you have. So like I can use the same battery on this one and on this one, and I have one back there. It's all the same. I can use the exact same 4S battery.
Okay, yeah, so the batteries on these are, up to $150, $175. How much is one of these batteries?
So maybe like $15 for a battery.
Yeah.
When you get into the 6S, they can be up to maybe like $20, $25, $30 per battery.
Where these are a couple dollars.
Yep, where those it's like maybe $1, $2 per battery.
So there's a difference now in the world. It's changing because DJI came out with the FPV, and everyone. It's you know what I compare it to. I remember in I want to say it was 1999, right around the 2000. I was at the motocross track, and a guy showed up in a 4-stroke dirt bike, and we're all laughing. Dude, what are you doing? We're all in 2 strokes. And we're looking over at him and like, you big dummy, you can't race a 4-stroke dirt bike. Well, what happened 3 years later? We're all on 4-stroke dirt bikes, and if a guy showed up on a 2-stroke dirt bike, we're thinking, you big dummy. Well, I think that's what's happened in digital. The purest of the sport don't like it because it's so simple, and you don't have to have the knowledge and input to be able to fly one of these drones. You don't have to go into beta flight and know how to solder and everything. You can just push a button and fly it. Now, even though this is an HD drone, there's still a lot more to do than just going out and buying this drone. Yeah, there's nothing to do. But it's still not nearly as much as what, an analog, or is it still the same amount of work?
I would say it's probably about the same amount of work.
The same amount of work, yeah. But what that means is this you use the HD DJI goggles, and the reception coming back to you looks like this, or analog looks like a 1970 TV.
Yeah, it looks like early in 80s, like 80s, with
really
the
bad.
lines going
you'll
through
see
it.
Yeah, it looks really bad. So this is a much more enjoyable experience than, do you have your other analog drone here? Oh, it's right here. Yeah, this is an analog drone. So looking at them, you sure can't tell the difference. They look the same. But what happens, so tell us, we'll get into that in a little bit, but tell us what components are in this drone. Or they're the same components in both of them. They're just, one's digital, one's analog. So kind of break it down.
So we have the ESC, which is the electronic speed controller, and that's this very bottom part. I don't know if you guys can see that on the camera. And that's basically what you wire all the power up to. That's what you're going to plug the battery directly into, all the motors. And then you have, on top of that, you have the flight controller. And the flight controller has a gyro, and that's what controls like how you turn left and right, because it still has to know which one's left, which one's right, which one's forward, back. So there's a gyro to help with all of that. And that's how you connect your VTX, which is your video transmitter, or the DJI. This is a Caddx Vista that's in this one. And then that's also how you connect the receiver so that your radio control can actually control the drone. And in this one, I'm using a TBS tracer receiver, but there's a whole bunch of different ones. There's FR Sky, there's ELRS. There's a bunch of different types of receivers too. And then if you're using a DJI Caddx Vista or the Air unit, it usually comes with the camera, and the camera would be directly attached to the Caddx Vista or the Air unit. But if you're using analog, you would have a VTX, and the camera would be attached to the flight controller and not to the VTX. Or depending on what kind of VTX you're using, it could be directly attached to the VTX. So like a lot of this stuff is interchangeable, and that's another part of the big learning curve, because if I break these motors, I can fix it myself. If I break the camera, I have some extra cameras from some other stuff that I already broke, and just swap out the camera, swap out the bad camera for the good one, or swap out the bad VTX for the good one, or swap out a bad motor for a good one. You're not doing that with these cameras.
About five or six different parts. They're all interchangeable. So what it cost, and so you built this yourself?
Yeah, so there's about 6 different parts.
But my point, so what did it cost to build this drone?
So to build this one, I think was maybe $300, something around that.
$300.
Yeah, it's like $300 bills flying in the air.
And if this is $3,000.
Yeah.
You know, and if I break this gimbal on this camera and I need to replace this camera, it's done.
It's like $600.
No. Just the gimbal, not the camera.
Yeah.
If you just break the gimbal, if you break the camera, I think you're
done.
You're done. You burn up something in this board, you're done. I mean, it's toast. There really is no parts to salvage out of this thing. You can't interchange the parts on these. You can change the motors and a couple of other little things, but usually when you ship this back to get something replaced, it's almost cheaper to always buy a new drone. Where you're telling me on this, how much is one motor?
One motor could be like $15.
And then the one camera?
The camera could be like $20.
Right, and the ESC?
If you just want the ESC, it could be like $30, but I would recommend buying the stack, which means the ESC and the flight controller.
And this is a 30-30?
Yeah, and this is a 30 by 30
Yeah,
stack.
so it's just a
perfect square.
Yeah, 30, then there's a 20 and a 16, and they're different sizes. So this is probably...
So this one's special because this is actually a custom board just for the Tiny Hawk.
Right.
But
so it's not interchangeable.
So these 5-inch drones, they have a standard like board size, which is a 30 by 30. And then there's smaller ones that goes 20 by 20.
The Cinewoop had a 20 by 20.
Yeah, that goes 20 by 20. And it's kind of standard sizes, but everything's interchangeable. But then you also have to make sure that they all play nice, right? So the motors have to go with the ESC, or the ESC has to play nice with the flight controller, or play nice with the camera, or play nice with the VTX. So you can buy it all like custom, but then also you need to make sure, okay, does this ESC work with this flight controller? Or does this VTX work with this flight controller? Or does this transmitter work with this radio?
So when you built this, how do you get this to work with this and those goggles?
Yeah, so the goggles is the easy part. The way the VTX works is just putting out the signal, and you just need something to pick up the signal. So there is no like kind of setting it up. It's just like it's like changing the TV and how you just have an antenna and everyone in the neighborhood could pick it up, right?
Right.
So this is, you just make sure that these are on the right channel and you can see the video.
If you go to the FPV races, you can actually put those goggles on and watch anybody race.
Yep.
Yep. But as far as these go, how do these connect?
So you have a receiver or a transmitter on the drone itself, and you have it connected to the radio because you have to bind it, and a special bind button like on the radio and on the receiver there that you press, that special bind. And like I said, so I'm using TBS Tracer, and so it's a special receiver, and for that specifically I had to put a module in the back of my radio, which goes right here. Whereas this radio, without this module, would work just fine for a few different types of drones without a special receiver. But I got a special one because the latency is a lot lower. So between movement of the stick and the drone moving, right, it's usually a few seconds or a millisecond, or it's a lot faster than that. But basically I use Tracer because it's even faster than some of the other protocols that they have.
And there's, what's this screen do?
So this screen, they all have screens. Like there's a little screen on that one, it's just a bigger screen. He has a screen. And it's just so that you can choose. This radio, I actually use for all of my drones. I use the same radio for all of them. So I can switch between which drone I want to use. I can even change up, like if this was throttle, I could make this throttle if I was left-handed, right? Or I can change up each one of these switches, and I can do all of that on here or also on my computer as well. So the screen is just on you're selecting the different radio. If it was one radio for one drone, you wouldn't really even need a screen because you could just, it's all the same one, right?
Yeah, right. And I like this one. This one's kind of like, feels like a what's it, PlayStation.
Yeah, like a PlayStation or an Xbox controller, yeah.
And inside the screen, you can also, let's talk about Betaflight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Betaflight is a program on the computer, and that way, like when you bind up your radio to your drone, they have a program called Betaflight, and you can actually you can change up how your motors are spinning, you can actually change up how much you move your stick. So if you want it to like on your throttle here, if you wanted the power to stop giving it throttle like at mid stick, like from here to here is as much power as you want, and then this does nothing, you can set all that in Betaflight, and you can set up how the drone even flies, how fast it turns, and looks forward and back and all that stuff, all in Betaflight. So
change your camera angle?
Yeah, so you change the camera angle just by moving that.
By moving that?
But yeah, you can change up, basically you change up how the drone flies, all in Betaflight.
Right, because those cameras they're locked into place. They don't move, they don't have a gimbal, they don't move. And so these cameras are actually pointing up.
Yep.
because this drone doesn't fly like this. This drone flies like this.
Yeah.
So the camera has to be at an angle, as you can see right here, and then you can adjust that on how aggressive you're flying, right?
Yeah, I usually do a 20-degree angle because I like freestyle flight, but a lot of those racers, they'll go up to like 40 or 50 sometimes.
Yeah. So they got to be like this. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're basically looking straight down almost,
Yeah,
it looks
yeah.
like.
All right. So if you're getting into it, you say first thing is buy the controller
Yep.
and get a simulator.
I think that's the first thing you should
Yeah.
do is get a radio and a
I
simulator.
think
on your
liftoff's
computer.
$25. Is it 30?
Yeah, it's not very much.
Yeah,
There's
it's
even
like-
uncrashed, which is like, I think that's only like 15 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a few free ones. I'm going completely blank. There's a company that's making those really nice goggles that are like 800 bucks, 600 bucks, and they came out with a simulator that I think is free too.
Okay. And so the difference between analog and HD is what?
So the biggest difference between analog and digital, not just HD, is you use, first off, if you're doing DJI, you're using these goggles, and the picture is just crystal clear. Like not even a question. I was actually having problems with this drone right here with my VTX. It kept giving me interference with electricity through it, and I actually have never looked through digital before, but when I installed this and I looked through these goggles, the picture was crystal clear. So it just gives you less hassle.
No, I mean on the drones, what's different?
Oh, so what's different is instead of a normal VTX, you are installing a Caddx Vista or a DJI Air unit. So it's actually a lot more expensive because you can actually buy a VTX for as low as like 15 bucks. I think this one was like 11, the one that's on this drone. So like as far as price goes, there's a huge price difference.
On the digital?
On digital, yeah. And so you're wanting the Caddx Vista or you're wanting the Air unit, and I think the Caddx Vista is like 120, 150, and then the Air unit is what, like almost 200 bucks
Right.
just for the Air unit. So the price is
So you
very
really need
different.
to choose one or the other, almost.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, you can't really, you can't use the Fat Sharks you can't use these Fat Sharks with digital.
No, honestly, I think if you're starting out, I would almost say start out digital because the really nice analog goggles are already like 500 bucks. I bought these almost a year, 2 years ago. These are the SkyZone 030s. They were maybe 450 when I bought them brand new. And I bought them right when digital started and no one really knew what was gonna happen. And it was like almost the same cost to buy both pair of these goggles. And the new Fat Sharks are like $500. The new Sky 040s, and then now there's like the 04Ss, which are also basically like the same price as the DJI goggles. So it's all personal preference. And if you buy the DJI goggles, you can even get an adapter to fly analog on them anyways. So I don't see much of a point in buying analog now, but feel free to correct me in the comments if that's what you think.
So when you buy the DJI FPV, it comes with the digital goggles and it comes with this controller. Unfortunately, this is the only controller that this drone works with. It doesn't interchange with all these other drones.
No.
So that's kind of sad, but they do have the DJI digital controller that can control all the digital components, but it doesn't work with the FPV. Only that controller works with the DJI FPV. But this one will work with all the digital drones out there.
Yeah.
But you can also use that. Explain how, if you have these goggles, you can still fly analog.
Yeah, you just have to get the adapter, which I haven't checked the price, but it's like $15, $20 for the adapter.
And then you can fly analog with those and get a better reception.
Yep.
But it still won't come in HD.
Yeah, it still won't come in HD, but it'll look the same, but the screens on these goggles are better than basically every analog, most analog goggle anyway, so
right.
It's gonna look nicer.
So this is the DJI. I get so confused. So you can still fly a digital drone with an analog controller.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it better to use this one?
It's simpler, right? Because you don't have to install an extra receiver in your drone. So I have to install a tracer receiver, whereas if I owned the DJI controller, I could use the Caddx Vista or the air unit would transmit not just the video signal, but also the radio signal.
A lot of that may seem very confusing, but camera drones seem confused to me in the beginning, and they're so simple.
We're coming like a fire hose. I feel like anyone
Hey, in the
watching
simulator, I mean, I'm sure everybody's different. I mean, I tried staying in there for hours and hours. I find it better to just jump in there for 20 to 30 minutes a day, work on one thing. The one thing that's really helping me is learning how, when you're flying a camera drone, you're just turning this way. So when you get in the simulator and you're trying to fly in the FPV and you're trying to fly it like that, no. The roll is really more important than even turning this way.
Yeah, I almost never turn just with the yaw.
Yeah, you turn with the roll. Yeah. So that's just one tip for you once you get in the simulator. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate it. Appreciate you coming by. I'm sure there's tons of questions for people out there. I think we just about covered everything. Radios, drones, batteries, receivers, simulators.
There are kits that you can buy with like these bigger 5-inch drones, but most of them are all custom. Like I know Get FPV and I think Rice Day Quads has them, and it's like custom kits that they're just putting different stuff together. And if you message them, a lot of times they'll go ahead and connect it for you and everything too. So,
but if you buy something like this bound and you have a problem, then you don't. The whole point of buying drones like this, and the whole part of the hobby is not flying it, but it's learning why this thing works, how it works, and how to fix it when something breaks.
Flying is just almost like it's a secondary aspect, I guess. I don't know.
Right. You know, like me, when I bought them, I was getting so confused with all this. I just wanted to fly, but the more I get into it, the more fun it is. And it's really, it gets simpler every day.
Yeah, like when I first got into it, I didn't know how to solder. I barely tinkered with electronics and stuff. Now I know how to solder, poorly, but I know how to, and I know how to like fix a bunch of electronics that I couldn't have fixed before either. So.
All right, Spencer. And my son's name is Spencer.
Yeah.
I appreciate you stopping by, explaining a little bit of the FPV world to us.
Yeah.
Any elevator speech?
No, I mean, I love drones. I got into FPV because I did buy a camera drone and I crashed it, and it cost me like $800 to fix it, and I wanted to cry. So I looked into these, and these are a lot more fun to fly anyways. So
yeah. And how long did it take you to really get to where you were good?
To where I was super confident, maybe 2 weeks, but I was in the simulator for almost 2 to 3 hours every day. So
yeah. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. And as always, if you got something out of this, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.